We've all heard of credit card touring, but what if I told you that you could go on a bike tour without breaking the bank? In this video, we'll address the 3 main expenses that you'll face on a bike tour and take a look at how you can keep spending to a minimum. Alright, bike touring on a budget. So this is a pretty hot topic amongst bike travelers, but I think it's fairly straightforward with the right mindset. But before we get into it, here's your weekly reminder to hit that subscribe button. Subscribing to the channel won't cost you a thing, and it really helps us out. I'm doing my best to make time to grow this channel, and currently only 20% of the people who watch it are actually subscribed. So if you're into bike touring, bike packing, all that kind of stuff, consider hitting the button. Okay, so bike touring can be very expensive. There are lots of expenses that can creep up on you, and before you know it, you've completely blown your budget. However, there are 3 main ones, and that's what we're going to address today. Alright, so this is a big one, so bear with me. Without a doubt, the easiest way to wreck your budget is with accommodation. A crappy motel room in Australia, for example, can cost you $150. You could survive for a week on that, maybe a week and a half. So what are some ways that we can save money on accommodation? So the first is pretty obvious, and that's camping. Finding free campsites is a really good way to go. They often have toilet facilities and sometimes even coin-operated showers. So maybe consider installing an app like iOverlander or Wikicamps here in Australia to help you find them. If there aren't any free campsites available, then consider wild camping or stealth camping. Find yourself a nice secluded spot, arrive late and leave early. Leave no trace and be respectful. Now, at times you can't be too fussy. We've slept in some less than ideal spots, but that's all part of the adventure. Now, stealth camping is a pretty big subject that could be a video all of its own, so leave a comment below if that's something you'd like to see. Another great way of saving money on accommodation is to use a site like Couchsurfing or Warmshowers. I can't really comment much on Couchsurfing because I haven't used it, but a lot of friends have, and they mostly have positive things to say. However, I have heard a lot of people complaining about a paywall recently amongst a few other changes they've made to the site. So it might still be a viable option, but do your research first. Warmshowers, on the other hand, is a site that we've used loads and we love it. And for those who don't know, Warmshowers is essentially the same as Couchsurfing, but it's specifically for touring cyclists. Now, being specifically geared towards cyclists, it does offer a lot of advantages over Couchsurfing. You'll always have somewhere safe to put your bike, you might even have access to tools, and you'll usually be hosted by a cyclist, which means you'll be staying with someone that you can relate to, which is what Warmshowers is all about. Warmshowers is all about community, and it encourages cultural exchange and human connection. We've met some amazing people using Warmshowers, and we've made some friends for life. However, let's not beat around the bush here. At the end of the day, most cyclists are using Warmshowers because they need somewhere to stay, they need a shower, they need laundry, and they might need somewhere to charge their devices. Warmshowers, and I'd imagine probably to a greater extent Couchsurfing, can be difficult at times. Sometimes, when you've had a long, hard day on the bike and you're completely exhausted, the last thing you want to do is socialize. And that's kind of the deal with Warmshowers. The host provides you with a bed and facilities, and you entertain them with stories from the road. Which, again, can be difficult when you're completely exhausted. But overall, that is a small price to pay for the amazing experiences that we've had using Warmshowers. Another way of saving money is to maybe try WWOOFing or HelpX or something like that. This is essentially volunteering for accommodation and sometimes food. Whereas WWOOFing is specifically geared towards organic farms, HelpX could be anyone that just needs a bit of help. Whether that's a small construction project or help on their hobby farm or even just some help around the house. When we first landed in Australia, we needed somewhere to stay for a week while we planned our next move. So we took to the site HelpX. On HelpX, we found Gary, a guy who lived alone on a big property and needed a little bit of help keeping on top of his various gardening projects and general maintenance around the property. In exchange for volunteering a few hours each morning, Gary provided us with accommodation and food. He would even cook all of our evening meals, as he loves cooking and having people to cook for. Using HelpX to connect with Gary really helped us on our first week in Australia. It allowed us to relax, to get our bearings, and to do so without spending a penny. And on top of that, Gary is an amazing guy, and we're super thankful to have had the experience. All right, finally, my last tip for saving money on accommodation is that there is definitely safety in numbers. If you happen to meet other cyclists on the road, then this is potentially an opportunity for all of you to save some cash. Now, this is very situational, but it's often possible to share accommodation expenses as a group rather than having to pay for it by yourself. As an example, sometimes it's possible to share a single campsite between maybe 4 cyclists, so instead of paying $20 to camp there by yourself, you can just pay $5 each. Maybe if you meet another cyclist out there, then you can share the cost of a twin hotel room, or maybe a family room if you have 3 or 4 people. Again, very situational, but worth bearing in mind. Okay, with accommodation out of the picture, the next biggest expense is going to be keeping yourself fed and nourished. But it isn't too complicated to keep those expenses under control. The number one rule is to always cook for yourself. Bars, restaurants, and cafes are not good value compared to cooking for yourself, at least in Western countries. I know that street food in places like India and Southeast Asia is very reasonably priced, and it's all part of the experience. But even then, I'd imagine cooking it yourself would probably be cheaper, but I don't really have any experience there, so I'm going to stick to what I know. Visiting supermarkets late in the day can be a good call, because late in the day is when they normally mark stuff down. Bakeries can also be good later in the day, because if they bake the bread fresh every day, sometimes you can score a deal on the old bread, maybe even get some for free. You can also save money on what food you choose to buy and how you choose to cook it. Couscous, for example, is super cheap and it's loaded with protein. It also doesn't require much fuel to cook, which obviously is another expense. And speaking of fuel, I favor an alcohol stove for any sort of extended bike trip, perhaps supplemented with a small wood burner or twig stove. A tiny can of fuel for a gas stove is about $10 and wouldn't last a week, whereas I can buy a litre of alcohol for my Trangia for $5 and it'll last me a month. And then if you have a twig stove, fuel is free. And to finish off the food discussion, here are 2 slightly more extreme ways to save some dough. The first is dumpster diving. Now, I haven't done this myself, but I really wish I had, because not only is it a great way to get free food, but you're also stopping it from going to landfill. For those who don't know, dumpster diving is just going through the bins behind a store looking for food that they've thrown out that's still good to eat. Now, obviously you have to be pretty brave to do it, and you have to be very careful, but I think it's got a lot of potential, particularly in the more expensive Western countries. The second, more extreme method is to eat roadkill. Peyton over at Nomad's Trails is sort of infamous for this. I'll put a link up top. Now, you definitely need to know what you're doing here. You need to know how to dress game, you need to know that the kill is fresh, but it could be a great option if you know what you're doing. All right, this one is huge. I am always shocked by the amount of people who are out there doing a big bike trip without even basic repair skills. Now, more power to them for getting out there and doing it with what they've got. It's great to see more people getting out there. But some basic repair skills could save them a ton of money. Now, I just replaced the bottom bracket on my mountain bike. I got a Shimano XT bottom bracket, which is great quality with fantastic seals for only $30. And the install was free because I had the correct tool for the job and the knowledge to use it. The tool you can get on Amazon for maybe $20 or $30, but it pays for itself in one use. I was once quoted $140 for new brake pads and a gear lever, both installed and set up. Now, brake pads are like 15 bucks and a gear cable is like $8. So I saved myself nearly $120 by doing it myself. And it took me less than half an hour. That's an entire week's budget saved by a little bit of knowledge and 30 minutes of my time. Before leaving on the last stint of our tour, I rebuilt my entire bike from the frame up, and it was probably one of the most valuable things I could have done in terms of preparation. Because any mechanical tasks that I couldn't do before, I can do them now. Alright guys, so there you are, the 3 main sources of expenditure on a bike tour and a bit of info on how you deal with them. I'd love to hear if you guys have any tips for saving money on a bike tour, so if you do, leave them in the comments. And if that was useful and you'd like to see more, then hit the subscribe button. And if you really like what we do, then consider supporting us on Patreon, or maybe even hit that little button below that says thanks. Alright, that's it. Cheers.